Today I'm going to keep growing my farm and we are going to read some Reddit stories. This story is from alias Tommy Steele. I found a video rental store in a small town. What was on the tape shattered my family. Whew, okay, let's get into it. I've always wanted to make this trip. My whole life, Seattle has been my home, and I'd never ventured far before now. A coast-to-coast road trip with my husband and children had been a fantasy of mine since I first started dating the man decades ago. It slowly became clear over the years that despite his promises, the trip would never be happening. At 50, I'm finally on the road. But I never wanted it to be like this, not under these circumstances. I'm alone. It's only happening now because my son is dead. After the divorce, my children were, in my mind, old enough to choose where they wanted to live. John, my oldest, chose to stay with me. My daughter, Bree, went with my ex-husband. I tried my best to maintain a relationship with her, but she never seemed interested. God only knows what my ex was telling her about me. Growing up, John was my world. I seldom dated after leaving his father. I just never had the time. As I worked 2 or 3 jobs while raising him, it was worth it though. John knew about my dream trip. He brought it up several times along his journey to become a man. "You'll get your trip one day, Ma," he said. "Even if I have to take you myself." His funeral was the worst day of my life. My ex-husband and daughter were there, and a piece of me hoped I would have at least some support from them. But it wasn't to be. The glare my ex gave me said everything, even though he didn't speak the words. "It's all your fault." I couldn't bring myself to speak at the podium after that. My daughter gave a eulogy instead. Through sobs, she lamented her rocky relationship with John and how much she regretted her role in them not being close. She even went as far as to tell everyone that he had been her inspiration to become a paramedic. John had never married, so I suppose it shouldn't have come as a surprise that he had appointed me the executor of his estate. It was then I learned he had listed me as the beneficiary of $1 million life insurance policy. I didn't give a shit about the money, or really much of anything. I spent a lot of time watching videos of my son on my phone. Every time I pressed play, I wished the house fire hadn't destroyed the old tapes from when our family was together. I would have given anything to see those again. It was at this low point I knew it was time for that road trip. It started off normally enough. I made the usual tourist stops, as well as many of the beaten path discovered through years of research. It wasn't until the Midwest that the problem started. I won't name the state, just in case. I'd been driving long enough to not remember what time I had started that day. The sun had long since set when my low fuel warning pinged from the dashboard. The timing was perfect, as I could barely keep my eyes open. I pulled off at the first exit I saw that listed the gas station, and slowly followed an empty road for miles towards the promised town. John's Town. Seeing the name made my spine shiver, but at glance at the gas gauge decided the matter for me. After several uncomfortable miles, the lights of a gas station appeared along the main road into town. As I pulled up to the pump, I noticed the absence of a credit card reader. While I did not want to enter the small building before me as a woman alone at night, the .32 Tomcat pistol in my purse gave me enough nerve to go inside to buy fuel. Though outdated, the inside was surprisingly well maintained. I went straight up to the counter where a young man in a camo hat stood, looking thoroughly uninterested. "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. "Can I get some gas on the pump out there?" The man stared at me without a word. Though he held my smile, I felt the hairs on my neck standing up. I could have sworn the lights inside dimmed slightly when he began pushing buttons on the register. "How much?" he asked in a monotone voice. "50, I said, sliding cash onto the counter. "Keep what's left, if there's any." Without breaking his gaze, to so much as glance at the bill, the man slowly reached for it. For a moment, The image of him snatching my arm and pulling me over the counter flashed across my mind, but he simply opened the drawer and placed the bill inside. Anything else? No, sir, that's it. Thank you, I said before speed walking back to my car. Though I kept my head down, I could feel his eyes on me as I pumped. I considered making a break for the highway, but my eyelids began to flutter once more once back inside my car. I could see the town ahead and decided it wouldn't hurt to at least see if the motel seemed safe. As I made my way down the main street, every building was dark except for the motel. It was an unassuming rectangular building with 2 floors. Most of the windows were dark, but the few rooms with lights on were somewhat reassuring. I sat in my car for a moment, the engine still running. Nothing seemed unusual as I scanned the parking lot. It seemed safe enough to walk inside. I grabbed my backpack, stepped out of my car and paused for a moment. I couldn't help but think of how much safer I would feel if John had been with me. When I walked towards the entrance, I looked back towards the street. To my surprise, the closest building was lit. I guess I had been too tired to notice it before. The neon sign out front read True Video. A video rental store still open in 2026? Wow. Guess the town's a little behind, I thought. The motel manager greeted me as I stepped inside the front entrance. To my immense relief, she seemed to be a perfectly normal lady, roughly my own age. Now, much more at ease, I opted to rent a room, and she gave me a physical iron key. Room 211 was exactly what you might expect. Old, small, with decor not updated since 1970. What paint that was visible in spots above the dreadful floral wallpaper was a weathered yellow. A queen bed sat against the back wall, facing a dresser with a TV on it. I set my backpack on the bed before turning back towards the TV. It had been years since I had seen an old tube television. And right next to it, an honest-to-God VCR. My mind went straight to 1999, when John was little. Once a week, I would take him to Blockbuster, and we would choose a film for a family movie night. I thought back to True Video across the street. The nostalgia was too enticing. I made my way out the cool night air. The hum of the neon sign broke the silence of the empty streets as I approached True Video. A bell on the door dinged as I stepped inside, but nobody approached the empty counter. I paid little attention, instead focusing on finding the family movie section. After a brief search, I held in my hands a copy of my son's favorite childhood film, All Dogs Go to Heaven. I stared at the tape as I stood at the counter, lost in my memories. "Anything else for you tonight, ma'am?" came a familiar voice. My eyes snapped upward to see the young man from the gas station smiling at me from behind the counter. I felt a chill race throughout my body. I couldn't respond. While the young man's clothes and demeanor were entirely different, it was definitely him. This time, however, I noticed a small circular scar on the side of his neck, as well as a name tag, Michael. My silence seemingly didn't affect the man, as he held his warm smile for several silent seconds. I regained control of my body and shook my head vigorously. "All right then," he beamed. "Your total is 537. Quickly, and with a shaking hand, I pulled a 5 and a 1 from my purse and dropped it on the counter. Ignoring his outstretched hand, the man simply scooped the bills off the counter as if I hadn't been so rude and handed me my change. "Thank you for your business, ma'am," Michael said cheerfully. "Have a wonderful evening." I hurriedly left without a word, tape in hand. I didn't stop until I was safely locked back inside of my room, now wide awake. It probably took half an hour to calm down, but eventually I reasoned to myself that the men must be brothers, or maybe even cousins. It made sense with the limited employment options in a town this small. That had to be it. While still on edge, I was finally relaxed enough to push the tape into the VCR and settle myself in the bed. Of course, I was crying within the first 5 minutes of the film. It was like being brought back in time without my son there waiting for me. I cried harder as I thought of his heart attack. He wasn't even 30 yet. The coroner said it had been quick, but John had still died alone in the dark. An hour into the film, I had run out of tears. In a way, the brutal experience had made me feel closer to my baby boy. It had been worth it. I closed my eyes, ready to drift off as the movie played in the background, when I heard it. Static. I guess that's why we got away from tapes, I thought. But before I could even open my eyes, I heard my ex-husband's voice from the TV speakers. He's beautiful. Good job, Grace. I'd know that moment anywhere. Sure enough, when my eyes snapped to the TV, there was the home video my husband had taken when John was born. The image of me holding our son in my hospital bed came into focus. Every fuzzy pixel matched the old tapes I'd lost in the fire. As I watched myself beam on the screen, the video again cut to static. After a moment came a video shot on the day we first brought John home. My ex gave a tour of the house on camera, proudly showing off the nursery we had built and decorated together. The screen cut again. My cheeks were soaked in tears. I was entirely transfixed. It hadn't even entered my mind how impossible this was. John's first Christmas. My dearly departed parents beamed as John happily beat the hellfire out of the toy they had gifted him. I saw the pride and joy on my own face. The video ended just as I remembered it, with John shitting himself loudly in his high chair. My parents' laughter was broken by another wall of static. John's first birthday played next, then his first words. A video I had taken of him racing through the house in his father's cowboy boots came next. Then the day his sister Brianna was born. 3-year-old John grinned ear to ear as he held his little sister. The scene played out just as I remembered. There was one difference, and that difference became a recurring theme. Whenever my daughter's face looked directly at the camera, the entire screen wavered and slid out of focus for a moment before returning to normal. Every video I had ever taken of the kids played in order, every single one. Their dance party at ages 6 and 3, their first bike rides, the silly moments, each of their milestones, the blog I filmed for 7-year-old John, wherein he rambled about how the Easter Bunny must be a trained killer. I remember how hard it was to keep a straight face during that. I moved to the edge of the bed, leaning forward as the next film started. I knew this one was the final tape, but I didn't want it to end. In the video, my children were playing pirates. My son was sword fighting my daughter, and despite being a full head taller, he had been letting her get strikes in against him. John had clearly intended to lose, throwing an exaggerated lunge and leaving himself wide open, holding that pose to give Bree a chance to strike. She saw the opportunity and stabbed him in the chest with her foam sword. John died in the most over-the-top way he could, falling dramatically to the ground and announcing his defeat. Bree straddled him and paused. I thought she was making sure he was dead, or maybe even legitimately concerned. Then she brought her sword down on his face in a rage, over and over, shrieking, "Die, die, die!" The video ends abruptly then, as I shut the camera off to separate my kids and explain to Bree that there was no need to be so violent. The screen went black. I stared into it, barely holding myself together. This impossible one-way conversation with the past had drained my soul. I tensed to stand up, but then the screen began a new video, one I had taken on my phone. John's 16th birthday. He sat with a scowl as I sang happy birthday to him with his friends. I grimaced. The moment was cute for me, but John had gotten a lot of flack for that video on social media. I was brought back to the moment I came to regret posting it. The screen flickered again. This time, the video wasn't one I recognized. In it, my teenage kids were arguing. He held a sandwich bag of something I couldn't quite discern, and a look of utter disappointment. "Answer me," he said. "What is this? Where did you get it? Screw you." my daughter shouted. You're not our dad. Give that back. Sis, this stuff can get you arrested. I don't care. It's my life, not yours. I don't answer to you. I'll tell Mom if you don't tell me where you got it right now. Go ahead, Bree shouted. I don't give a fuck what Mom thinks. Dad won't believe either one of you anyway. At this, John winced. The camera zoomed in on his face. He looked helpless. I just don't want you to lose everything, he said quietly. I'm not going to, you idiot, she screamed. You think I've never done this before? I'm gonna party if I want, and you can fucking deal with it. Before I could acknowledge the frozen brick that had fallen into my gut, the video changed again. It was the home I shared with John after the divorce. The shot came from somewhere across the street. The house was dark, and nothing seemed amiss. Then, an orange glow appeared in one corner of the house, the fire, and worse, a figure passed by the flames, fleeing the scene. My heart nearly fell out of my body. The fire department had suspected arson, but no concrete evidence had emerged in the investigation. At the time, my ex-husband and I had been in legal battles to increase my visitation with my daughter. Once John had told me about the drugs, I tried to get more involved in her life. My ex fought me every step of the way. The police immediately questioned him, but told me his alibi had been rock solid. I was numb, but I didn't have the time to dwell on the revelation, as the next video began. John's high school graduation walk. A happy memory out of place for this time, but one I had filmed myself. His father had chosen not to attend, but his sister had. Then the final video appeared before me. John sported the same new haircut as he had the year he died. My two kids were sipping vodka at John's kitchen table. Things had been strained between them for at least a decade. But my daughter had grown up quite a lot after she moved away from my ex and his influence. It was nice to see them getting along. The two were playing a card game, with the loser having to take a sip from their glass every round. My daughter pounded down the last drops and excused herself to refill her glass. The camera followed her to the counter. With her back to John, she filled her glass from a water bottle. The frame stopped with a smirk on her face as she did so. I assumed she was proud of cheating in their contest. The screen glitched again, and there was John. My son was sprawled on the floor, drooling over himself and giggling profusely. Hey sis, he slurred from the floor. I'm so glad you came over. I missed drinking with you. My daughter's face wavered on the screen again. Oh, thank you, bro, she said, slowly reaching into her bag, before kneeling down beside her big brother. You've done your part perfectly. Part? He said. Oh, am I an actor now? The camera suddenly shifted to my daughter's point of view. Sure, she said, glancing down at the syringe in her hand. A real A-lister. John grinned, his head flopping onto his shoulder. I'd like to thank the Academy for, he started, but the alcohol had taken its toll. My heart thundered as I watched Bree take the cap off the syringe. I've got you, bro, she said soothingly. Just sleep. I watched helplessly as whatever she gave him took effect. I saw my son cough, convulse, froth at the mouth, and die, reaching out to his sister for help the entire time. That bitch'll get the money, she whispered after John stopped moving. I'm sure of it, but I'll figure something out. The screen abruptly went black. The VCR ejected the tape. Tears flowed freely as I came to terms with the horrors I had just seen. I sobbed in the darkness of my hotel room for several minutes. I snatched the tape from the VCR and sprinted out of the room. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, my eyes shot across the street to True Video. I stormed up to the building, but stopped dead when I drew close. The windows were shattered and boarded up from the inside. The neon sign was broken and clung to charred brick by a single rusty bolt, ready to give way at any moment. When I tried the front door, it was unlocked. When I stepped inside the store, I found it completely destroyed. Half the inventory was long gone. What remained was caked in dust and ash. My eyes fell to the counter I had stood at hours earlier. On it, a small television flickered to life. Michael came into focus on the screen. "Get her messages," he said. "She never deleted them. She had help getting the drugs. Her boyfriend also knows she set the fire and will break under pressure. Good luck." When he finished, the TV went dark. I don't know how long I stared at it. It might have been minutes, maybe even hours. When I finally regained my senses, I went straight to the only local I could speak to. Bursting through the motel entrance, I stomped up to the counter and threw the tape on it. "What the fuck is going on in this town?" I shouted at the manager. "Where did that freak at True Video get this?" The manager turned ghost white but said nothing. "Answer me." She took a deep breath. "What did you see on the tape?" she asked in a voice barely above a whisper. "I saw my daughter," I said, as my voice cracked. "I saw her murder her brother. Did Michael give that to you?" "Yes," I said, raising my broken voice once again. "And what the hell was he doing at that gas station earlier? I want to know what sick game that bastard is playing. I want to know right fucking... Please don't talk about my sons like that." The manager interrupted quietly. She sighed. "Daniel and Michael are my twin boys," she said. "Daniel works at the gas station and Michael worked at True Video. He was killed in a robbery 2 years ago. He was shot in the throat before they burned the store down." She paused for a moment. I recognized her pain, one grieving mother to another. They caught the killers thanks to the security cameras, but last year, another traveler said he rented a video from that store. He said it showed the murder of his sister. She looked at me. "The tape will be blank now," she said. "But Michael was never one to lie. Please leave. Get justice for your son." And with that, she turned her back on me. No amount of screaming made her turn around again. So I went home. Drove all through the night and all day until I made it home. I found the information I needed. I got the man to talk. The guilt-ridden coward fessed up quick. My daughter was arrested and charged with John's murder. Last month, the jury convicted her and sentenced her to life in prison without parole. That same day, a VHS tape appeared on my doorstep. With shaking hands, I pressed play. My son appeared on the screen. He said nothing, but he didn't have to. He smiled gently and waved once before the video went black. My VCR whirred and opened to eject the tape, though nothing came out. But I got the message. Whoa. Okay. Sometimes I even think maybe everything I experience isn't real, but then I try to remember that that's highly unlikely, but you never know, right? Okay, so next story is from Doozy Brook. I found a home video of my mother that shouldn't exist. My mother died a few days after giving birth to me. I never met her, only saw her through the videos my father kept on his phone. My older brother always resented me and blamed me for her death. I didn't argue. Part of me believed him. It felt like my existence had cost us everything, like she would still be alive if I hadn't been born. I saw it in my father too, or maybe I imagined it. He was always quiet, always distant, carrying a loneliness he never spoke about. He never blamed me, not once, but sometimes silence says more than words ever could. Okay, that's kinda true though. No one ever entered her room. Not my father, not my brother, but I did. Sometimes I would sneak in, just to feel close to her, to pretend, if only for a moment, that I knew what it felt like to be loved by a mother. The room never changed, nothing moved, her presence lingered in the stillness, in the faint scent that clung to the air. But even that began to fade, day by day. I remember thinking that maybe I should stop going in, before even that last trace of her disappeared. Eventually, I did. That was 12 years ago. When I turned 17, my father died. Not long after, my brother left. Before he did, he told me I was the poison that killed his parents. I wanted to tell him I was their son too, but the words never came. Tonight, I got drunk and walked into her room. I cursed myself for ever being born, then collapsed onto her bed, staring up at the ceiling. The thoughts came slowly, heavy and quiet. Would my death finally mean something to my brother, or would it be the first time my life meant anything at all? I lay there longer than I should have. There wasn't really anywhere else to go. After a while, I got up and looked around the room. My mother's belongings were still neatly arranged inside her cupboard, untouched, preserved like time had stopped for her alone. Her clothes hung exactly as they did in those videos. I found my parents' wedding album too, every page filled with a kind of happiness that made something twist inside me. Looking at it, I couldn't help but feel that maybe I was never meant to exist. That I was a fracture in something once whole, the curse this house never recovered from. I put the album aside and opened a small safe tucked behind her things. Inside were a few of her cherished belongings, carefully kept, almost protected. A faint trace of her perfume still lingered. There was a folded hospital bracelet with her name on it, the ink slightly faded. A small diary, its pages filled with neat handwriting, lists, reminders, thoughts that ended too soon. A hairbrush with a few strands still caught in it, a dried flower pressed between paper, fragile but preserved. Beneath them lay a photograph. My parents and my brother, the day he was born. A hospital room. My mother looked weak, exhausted, but her smile was radiant, full of a quiet, overwhelming joy. My father stood beside her, smiling too, not just for her, not just for my brother, but for himself. It was a kind of happiness I had never seen in him while he was alive without her. Next to the photograph was her wedding ring, resting in its box, small, simple, beautiful. There were more things beneath it, a pair of tiny knitted socks, unused, a sealed envelope with my father's name on it, never opened, a second hospital tag, smaller, no name on it, just a date, and under everything, her phone. I opened the envelope with my father's name on it and began to read. I wish I could be there for a son's life. I want to see him smile, watch his first steps, see him grow into a man, fall in love, have a family of his own. I wanted to hear him call me Mom. I wanted to hear his voice, but fate is not kind. There is a cruelty in this world that hides behind promises. I love you, Victor. I love both of our boys. I wish we hadn't made the mistake we did. We wished for a son to be born, alive and well. We wished for the family we dreamed of, but I didn't understand then that the wish we chased was fractured, wrong in a way we could never take back. Our fractured wish might make his life miserable, but he deserves to know the truth. Please tell him or show him what I've left him. He will understand. After all, he is our boy. Tell Ivan I'm sorry for leaving so soon. Tell him to be kind, to be a good big brother to Felix. Do not blame him. I am truly sorry. Take care of them from what's to come. Love, Elena. When I finished reading, my hands didn't feel like mine anymore. I just stood there, staring at the letter, confused. I couldn't make sense of all of it, but one thing felt certain, heavy and undeniable. My mother had died so I could live. I really was the cause of all this. Do not blame him. The words echoed in my head over and over, like they didn't belong to me. I didn't know who they were meant for, my father, my brother, or me. And that line about the wish? What had they done? What had they asked for? With shaking hands, I picked up her phone and turned it on. The screen lit up slowly, as if it had been waiting. I began scrolling, hoping, needing to find something else. Something that could explain what she meant. The phone was completely empty except for a single video titled Felix. I hesitated, closed my eyes, took a breath. Then I pressed play. The video began in silence. For a few seconds there was nothing, just darkness, like the camera was still being adjusted. Then a faint rustle, fabric, breathing, and then my mother, alive. She was sitting upright in the hospital bed, pale, drenched in sweat. Her hair clung to her face, her eyes sunken but alert, too alert. The kind of awareness that didn't belong to someone who had just given birth. She looked like she stared straight into the camera. Victor, I don't know if you'll watch this, or Ivan, or if you'll let Felix watch it. Felix, you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to live without carrying guilt that was never yours. This is your second birth, Felix. You were our first child, but you were born dead. We were devastated. It took us 10 years to have you. Doctors said that it was impossible. We turned to God, nothing. Then one day it just happened. We thought that waiting was worth it, that God heard our prayers and granted us our wish. Those 9 months were not easy, but we were happy. Our son was going to come into our life, and we were excited to show you how beautiful life can be. We had so much love to give you that we were always thinking about the day you will be born. Yeah, and then you were born dead. I held your cold body in my arms. 9 months and we lost everything. Grief takes you to places you don't understand. We prayed for your peace, for your soul to be free, but somewhere along the way, that prayer changed. I don't even remember when. It became a wish to have you back, just once, to hold you warm again. Victor cried in silence when he prayed, and I cried in his arms. We forget that when we pray, something else also listens to our prayers. And sometimes that something even answers. That's what happened to us. When that voice came, we answered with grief in our hearts, and it hurt us. The next year, I got pregnant again. We thought our wish had been granted. We already knew your name, so we gave it to him, Ivan. He came into our lives like light. We believed everything was finally right again. And then, a week ago, 6 years after Ivan's birth, you were born. We called it a blessing, not a wish. But today, I saw the mark on you, the exact same birthmark you had the first time. That's when we understood. You are our wish, Felix. But we don't know what Ivan is. He is our son, your brother, but he was never part of that wish, and we didn't understand it until the answers came to us without us asking. I may look weak after giving birth to you, but this isn't because of you. This is something else. Listen to me carefully, Felix. What I'm about to tell you is very important. Our wish wasn't heard by God, and it wasn't a devil either. It was something else. Something beyond us, something from a world that exists alongside ours, but without a physical form. Something that needed a body, something that needed enough energy, enough connection to cross over. I don't know what it is. Victor had a theory. He called it cross-possession. A world like ours, but displaced, out of reach. He believed there were souls there, wandering, searching for bodies, waiting for a moment strong enough to connect. And grief is strong, strong enough to be heard. That connection took time, years, and now it's here. I don't know if it's you, Felix, or Ivan. I don't even know if it's either of you. I can't be certain. And that's what scares me the most. But you need to be careful. Both of you are human, both of you are my sons. But if Victor is right, then there is something else. Something dormant, living inside of one of you, waiting. We took some precautions. Victor must have placed a talisman in our house. As long as you don't stay away from the house for too long, the integration will never complete. Ivan, darling, you became our light. You brought life back into this house. when we thought we had lost everything. If you ever start to feel different, if your thoughts don't feel like your own, if you hear something calling you from far away, don't answer it, don't follow it, because it won't be guiding you back. It will be learning how to replace you. And Felix, if you're the one it chose, if you ever feel like you've lived moments before they happen, or see things that don't belong to this world, you must tell someone. You must not keep it inside. There is one more thing Victor noticed. Something we didn't understand at first. The talisman doesn't just protect you from integration. It holds time itself in place. That talisman does not belong in our world, and I don't know where Victor got it from. He only told me it came from Sage, someone he called Serovilen. So if either of you ever feels at home outside this house, if the world beyond these walls starts to feel more familiar than the place you grew up in, that means it's already begun. Please, stay together, watch each other, don't let either of you drift too far. I love you both. The video ended. I sat there for a while, unmoving, the silence pressing in on me. My eyes burned as I rubbed them, not even realizing when the tears had started. The room felt heavier now, like it was listening. I wished I had met her just once. To hear her voice without a screen between us. To feel her arms around me, warm, real, safe. I wondered what that would have felt like. If it would have been enough to quiet everything inside me. But all I had were fragments. A voice in a recording, a room that wasn't mine, a life that didn't feel like it belonged to me. I leaned back against the bed, staring into nothing, letting her words replay in my head. The wish, the voice, the talisman. One of us. For the first time, it didn't feel like I was alone in that room. It felt like I had never been. That's when I heard footsteps. I looked at the door, and Ivan stood there with his backpack. Sorry, Felix. I should have understood you better. I will be kind to you like a good big brother. He smiled. That smile felt different, as if it didn't belong. We will be a happy family, just like Mom wanted. I wouldn't trust that. I wouldn't trust that he's your brother, really, because he left. Remember, she said, don't leave the talisman for too long. Yeah, so there's one comment saying, I think a better word for this cross-possession is reincarnation. And I mean, reincarnation just sounds even more horrifying. Oh no. And I always read these stories at night, of course, and I'm not the person that likes to listen to this when I'm about to go to bed. I'm not falling asleep to Nosleep stories, because that's just... I have a very weak mind. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.